Shabbat Shalom. In just 9 days, we'll celebrate the festival of Shavuot, which is to say, in more traditional language, that tonight we enter the 41st day of the Omer. And as I count up to Shavuot, busily organizing teachers and lessons for our all-night Shavuot event here at CBE, which all of you should come to the evening of May 16th, I paused to realize that this will be my 6th Shavuot with this community. This fall will mark my 7th year at CBE. And as I read the Torah portion this week, focused as it is on the ancient Israelite sabbatical 7th year of rest, I thought, maybe I should look into that. Now, just to be clear, this fall marks 7 years for both Rabbi Timoner and me, and neither of us is actually thinking about taking a sabbatical anytime soon. Also, 3 of my years were as an intern, and I'm not sure that counts. But as we continue this season of counting the Omer, and as I think about ending my 6th year here at CBE, amidst the perennial hustle toward Shavuot, I've been thinking about the value of sabbaticals writ large, and about how we mark ancient agricultural rhythms like the Omer and sabbaticals today. Parashat Bahar, which is the first of the double parsha that we read this week, commands that after 6 years of working the land, farmers should neither till nor tend their fields nor prune their vineyards to give the natural world some kind of rest. This sabbatical or Shemitah year is a protective measure for the land, but it is also, as many of us know, a kind of economic reset. Not only is the sale of produce forbidden in the 7th year, but after 7 cycles of Shemitah, a 50th year called the Jubilee year requires the Israelites to cancel debts and free any Israelites that had been enslaved. This system of distancing oneself from the economy is by design something of a year-long Shabbat, honoring the freedom and dignity of all Israelites and proving to society that a person's worth comes from more than merely one's labor or how much they are able to produce. And all week long, as I've encountered this parsha, my colleagues and I have been inclined to make the obvious parallel to our experience of this past year. People taking a step back from labor, an economy slowing down, a time that feels unlike the normal cycle of how things are supposed to go, all with an invitation for us to consider our own worth beyond what we would assume in a normal world or a normal economy. But the truth is that the year of pandemic has not been a Shemitah year. This past year has proven why we need a Shemitah year. We've seen how hard we were working before, and we've seen the brokenness of so many systems that were in place in our lives and in the world. Now, I know this echoes much of what I've been preaching about these past few months, but I hope that's just a sign of how true this is. And it seems that a better connection between Shemitah and the present moment is the text's invitation to take a sabbatical right now. Lest we think that our rest occurred while many of us were at home, and now is the time to spring into action, now may actually be the time for us to take some period for a kind of Shemitah. The laws of sabbatical command us to take a step back precisely when we wouldn't want to give ourselves a Sabbath, even if stay-at-home policies gave us the illusion that we were doing just that already. And guess what, friends? In the agricultural calendar of the land of Israel, this coming Rosh Hashanah marks the beginning of an actual Shemitah year. This September, when many of us anticipate that life will be returning to some kind of normal, we will be entering the Shemitah year of 5782. It will literally be a sabbatical in just a few months. Seems like a chance to lean in. The English word sabbatical retains the connection between Shemitah and Shabbat. It is the 7th year in the cycle, after all. And we read, Ki tavo'u el haaretz asher ani noten lachem, when you enter the land that I give to you, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat ladonai. The land shall observe a Sabbath of God. The text even calls this special agricultural year a Sabbath. The rabbis of the Midrash connect the root of sabbatical, Shabbat, Shin Bet Tav, to another root, Shin Vav Bet, as in Shuv, or Teshuvah, return. They look at the Hebrew conjugation of the land shall rest, v'shavta haaretz, and read the land shall return, which would be vocalized in a similar way. And they use this to teach that when God gave the land of Israel to Abraham, Abraham returned the land to God. This demonstrates the ultimate lesson of Shemitah, that the land itself always belongs to God and not to mortals who merely think of themselves as landowners. The land, therefore, must be returned every so often to some kind of stasis. Thinking of Shemitah as return is especially useful for us this year. We are slowly returning to everyday in-person life, both at work and personally. But the return to stasis, the return to equilibrium to God's preference for how the world should be, requires an acknowledgement of how much has changed. The many ways in which we are not who we were before the pandemic, and the even more ways in which we might try to be something better as individuals and as a society. And so before we jump back in, we might give ourselves some space, or maybe some time. Not to take a full year off from all of our duties, probably that seems like impossible for most of us, but to take some time maybe this summer, to breathe, to meditate, and to give ourselves some time to reset. On national and global levels too, we might consider what a Shemitah might actually look like as part of a return to stasis. Maybe that means recommitting to caring for the earth, giving our land and our atmosphere a rest, and building systems that are more sustainable for the environment. Maybe it means taking seriously the national calls for cancellation of debt of various kinds. There's a reason the Torah includes debt cancellation in this week's Torah portion. In the words of the Eitz Chaim Torah commentary, this prevents the polarization of society into two classes, wealthy, powerful landowners on the one hand, and permanently impoverished people on the other. Maybe as part of our reset and return, we might think about who is enslaved today, who is weighed down by the burden of unending debt, and figure out how they might in the future have an equal opportunity to feel free. If these seem like headlines taken from the news or from recent political slogans, then perhaps it's just good timing. It's precisely what the Torah tells us this week is a recipe for resetting, for resting, and in so doing, returning. Each of us can take from this parsha some different aspect of what Shemitah may mean for us, whether it has to do with our work or the world or some other aspect of economic life. But the time feels right for us to take the idea of sabbatical seriously. The fact that it will soon be a sabbatical year is just icing on the cake. And though this coming year isn't really going to be a sabbatical year for me, despite the right timing after 6 years, we'll talk about it later, I'm going to think through how I might get a little release, a little Shemitah this summer. Hopefully, especially that feels necessary before Rosh Hashanah, before we come back together in some kind of in-person way. May we all give ourselves the space and time we need to rest, to reset, and to return to something better in the coming months. Shabbat Shalom.